From our Washington, D.C. studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. President Trump has signed an executive order guaranteeing Qatar's security after Israeli airstrikes on Doha. This and more in today's news, so stay tuned. We have breaking news. Israel has attacked the global Sumud Flotilla and arrested Greta Thunberg. Activists announce that live broadcasts have been cut off from almost all of the ships. Israel has halted the flotilla in international waters. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said that it had ordered the activists to change course. The flotilla has around 50 ships with more than 500 activists from 45 countries. The flotilla is loaded with food and medical supplies to break the Israeli blockade in place since 2009. The Israeli military has now taken control of 6 vessels: Cirrus, Alma, Spectra, Hoga, Adara, and Dirgar Sin. In a post on X, the Israeli Foreign Ministry posted a video of Thunberg's arrest. So far, Israel's genocidal war has killed nearly 70,000 Palestinians. A federal judge has struck down a Trump administration policy aimed at deporting foreign students for supporting Palestinian rights. Judge William Young ruled the policy is unconstitutional, saying it violates the First Amendment. In a 161-page ruling that stressed non-citizens lawfully present in the United States enjoy the same free speech rights as U.S. citizens. The case was brought by the American Association of the University Professors, or AAUP, and the Middle East Studies Association after several students and scholars were detained. The plaintiffs accused the government of enforcing what it called an ideological deportation policy, citing Trump's executive orders that targeted non-citizens. The government rejected that claim, calling it a product of imagination. It argued it retained authority to deport individuals who pose risks to U.S. foreign policy, even without criminal charges. AAUP's president, Todd Wolfson, condemned the policy as a betrayal of American values. He said that the goal was to intimidate and silence dissent. Jamil Jaffer of the Knight First Amendment Institute hailed the judgment as historic, saying no one should be punished for political views. The Justice Department has declined to comment. The ruling is expected to be appealed, potentially reaching the Supreme Court. Protesters took on to the streets of downtown Chicago on Tuesday against the presence of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and military forces in the city. Demonstrators carried banners and chanted slogans. They voiced anger at the Trump administration's immigration policies. The march blocked traffic in parts of downtown area. Organizers said that the protest was part of a nationwide movement. They demanded that the government end deportations and shut down ICE. The demonstrators remained peaceful but saw heavy police presence. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order guaranteeing Qatar's security. The order pledges U.S. military retaliation if the Gulf nation comes under attack again. The move follows Israeli airstrikes on the capital Doha last month. Israel claimed it was targeting Hamas leaders, but instead killed members of their team and a Qatari security officer. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later apologized to Qatar. Trump praised Qatar as a steadfast ally and that supports U.S. mediation in conflicts. He said that the two nations are bound by close military ties and shared interests. The announcement came after the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Doha, reaffirming the partnership. Qatar has condemned Israel's strikes as cowardly and treacherous, with officials vowing to defend their sovereignty. Analysts say that the order signals Washington's attempt to repair ties with Qatar while maintaining its support of Israel. A U.S. federal appeals court has heard arguments in the case of Turkish student Rümeysa Öztürk. She was detained in March after co-authoring an op-ed critical of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Öztürk, a Fulbright scholar at Tufts University, was arrested outside her Massachusetts home by plainclothes immigration and customs enforcement agents. Her visa was revoked and she was held in a Louisiana detention center for 6 weeks before a judge ordered her released in May. The American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, says her detention was retaliation for free speech. ACLU's Isha Bandari says that there's no reason Rümeysa Öztürk should be in detention. Öztürk said her writing was a peaceful method of communication, yet it landed her in an inhumane ICE prison. The court also heard a similar case involving a Palestinian student at Columbia University. A ruling in both cases is pending. Israel's assault on Gaza shows no let-up despite talks of ceasefire, as Israeli soldiers killed at least 51 Palestinians in strikes since dawn today. 7 rescue workers were injured as they tried to save people trapped in a school in Zaytun. The Palestinian Health Ministry reports 2 starvation deaths, including that of a child, in the past 24 hours due to Israel's ongoing blockade of food and humanitarian aid since March of this year. That brings the famine-related toll to 455 people, among them 151 children. Since August, when the UN confirmed famine in Gaza, 177 people have died of hunger, including 36 children. The UN Refugee Agency, UNRWA, says that the Israeli army kills on average 100 Palestinians daily, in addition to deaths from hunger and lack of care. Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini warns that even food distribution sites have become targets. The Israeli military has closed Al-Rashid Street, a key civilian route, forcing thousands south. Meanwhile, 11 unidentified bodies were buried in a mass grave in Al-Shifa hospital. Since October 2023, Israel has killed 66,000 Palestinians, most of them women, children, and elderly, all civilians. International and Israeli human rights groups have called Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza a genocide. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has warned top brass that more senior commanders will be fired as part of a sweeping overhaul of military culture and fitness. Speaking to 800 generals and admirals at Marine Corps Base in Quantico, Virginia, on Tuesday, Hegseth blasted past leadership for focusing on diversity and climate change over combat readiness. He warned no more climate change worship, no more division, distraction, or gender delusions. Hegseth announced tough new standards, gender-neutral combat fitness tests, twice yearly weigh-ins, no beards and long hair, and higher physical benchmarks for combat units. He said it is unacceptable to see, quote, fat journals in the halls of the Pentagon. He also promised to cut mandatory training, overhaul oversight systems, and give commanders more authority to enforce discipline. Hegseth told officers uncomfortable with his reforms to resign, saying the Pentagon is clearing out the debris and leaders should be ready and focus on warfighting. A far-right push to ban the hijab in European Parliament is sparking backlash, with critics calling it sexist and Islamophobic. Details coming up next. The U.S. government officially shut down Wednesday after talks between President Donald Trump and the Democrats failed. Negotiators missed a midnight Tuesday deadline to fund the government. The two sides remain far apart. Democrats want healthcare reforms, including restoring Medicaid funding and extending Affordable Care Act subsidies. Republicans insist on what they call a clean funding bill without policy changes. The House passed a short-term bill last month, but it failed in the Senate. As of today, many federal employees are furloughed or working without pay. Essential services such as border security, hospital care, and air traffic control continues, but inspections, national parks, and travel could face major disruptions. Senator Tina Smith and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar have reintroduced the No Shame of School Act. The bill targets the practice of lunch shaming, where students unable to pay for meals are singled out in schools. The legislation would stop districts from publicly identifying students with unpaid meal bills or hiring debt collectors to chase after families. It requires schools to certify children for free or reduced price meals and allow them to be reimbursed for serving those meals. Omar said no child should fear being shamed over an unpaid lunch bill. She pointed to her home state of Minnesota's universal school meals as a model. Smith said kids should never be humiliated for being hungry. She criticized the Trump administration's cuts to food assistance, saying hunger holds back learning. Supporters say that the bill eases pressures on families while ensuring that every child has equal access to nutritious school meals. A proposal to ban the hijab in European Parliament is facing sharp backlash. Martin Shishdiwan, co-chair of the left, described the proposal as nothing more than an Islamophobic distraction. He accused the far-right politicians of targeting Muslim women to spread fear and division. The initiative was launched by Swedish MEP Charlie Weingers of the Sweden Democrats. He has circulated a petition seeking to ban hijabs, niqabs, and other Islamic headscarves for EU staff and contractors. Weimers claimed that the measure would ensure neutrality, empower women, and improve security screenings. But critics say it is sexist and an attack on freedom of religion. Socialist MEP Hena Jalul Muro said she was shocked, calling the idea filled with hatred, sexism, and Islamophobia. Weimers plans to submit the petition to Parliament President Roberta Metsola by Friday. Similar bans exist in France, Austria, and the Netherlands. A strong rebuke to Afghanistan's ruling Taliban government came at the United Nations in New York. Mustafa Aqol, senior fellow at the Cato Institute, told an international conference that the Taliban's ban on children's education, especially girls, violates Islamic teachings. He said Muslim societies advanced women's rights more than a century ago when the Ottoman Caliphate opened modern schools for girls. By denying women this right, the Taliban are undoing that progress. Aqol stated that the group's narrow interpretation of Islam denies Muslims the freedom to practice their faith as they believe. He reminded the audience that the Quran says there is no compulsion in religion. The event, hosted by Afghanistan's mission to the UN, brought together ministers, diplomats, scholars, and rights activists. Akio called the fight for freedom in Afghanistan an uphill but vital struggle. He urged challenging Taliban policies with religious arguments, not just political ones. An investigation has revealed a large-scale attempt to strike nearly 80,000 Muslim voters from the electoral rolls in Bihar, a politically key state in northern India. The Reporters Collective found formal petitions to delete these names were submitted to election officials in the name of the Bharatiya Janata Party, or the BJP, which leads India's Hindu nationalistic government. The petitions claimed without evidence that all of the voters were not Indian citizens. Election authorities received the request but took no action against those filing them. Residents told reporters they now fear that they lose their right to vote. The Dhaka constituency near the Nepal border was won by the BJP in 2020 by just 10,000 votes. Analysts say even a small number of deletions could tip the scale. On the ground, several officials of political parties of all hues have spoken of how the electoral roll revision can be manipulated to help the ruling Hindu nationalist party. At least 6 civilians were killed and 24 others wounded after artillery fire struck a displacement shelter in El-Fasher, western Sudan. Local relief groups accused the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, of carrying out the attack. Witnesses say that food kitchens serving the poor and displaced were hit, leaving pots shattered and meals scattered. Darfur Regional Governor Mini Arko Minawi condemned the attack, calling it a new crime against civilians and a flagrant violation of international law. He is urging urgent action from human rights groups. El-Fasher, a key humanitarian hub, has seen intense fighting between Sudanese forces and the RSF since May. The war, which erupted in April 2023, has killed more than 20,000 people and displaced 16 million, according to the United Nations. Some studies put the death toll closer to 130,000. Bangladesh's chief advisor, Muhammad Yunus, has unveiled a 7-point plan at the UN to safeguard the persecuted Rohingya. Speaking at a high-level conference in New York, the Nobel laureate said that the world cannot keep the Rohingya waiting any longer to return home. Yunus noted that Bangladesh now shelters more than 1.3 million Rohingyas, including 150,000 who arrived in the past few months, worsening the humanitarian strain on the city of Cox's Bazar. He said that the crisis rooted in Burma has left Bangladesh bearing huge social, financial, and environmental costs. The plan calls for a practical roadmap for safe repatriation, pressure on Burma's military and the Arakan army to halt violence. He also calls for an international monitoring unit in the state of Rakhine, funding for humanitarian needs, and dismantling of the narco economy fueling cross-border crimes. Yunus said 8 years since the Burmese military's genocide against the Rohingya began, initiatives are lacking and aid is falling far short. He urged global action to resolve the crisis once and for all. U.S. researchers have made a breakthrough in reproductive science, creating early-stage human embryos using DNA-born skin cells. The study was published in the journal Nature Communications. Scientists at Oregon Health and Science University removed the nucleus, which carried the full genetic blueprint, from a skin cell. They then combined it with sperm to spark embryo development. The method could open new paths for treating infertility linked to age or illness, as almost any cell in the body might be used to create life. Experts say that the technique still needs refinement and could take up to a decade before being ready for fertility clinics. While researchers hailed the progress, they urged caution. They stressed that the need for a public debate on the ethical and social consequences of rewriting the process of human creation. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We're a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage on YouTube. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.